The war had been raging for decades, a ceaseless conflict between humanity and the alien civilization known as the Valith. Their technology was advanced beyond comprehension, their motives inscrutable to human minds. Yet despite their overwhelming superiority in numbers and weaponry, they had never fully crushed humanity. Instead, it became a stalemate, a grinding cycle of skirmishes, retreats, and desperate counterattacks that left both sides bloodied but unbowed. Corbin was not a hero by any stretch of the imagination. He wasn't even sure how he'd ended up on the front lines. Maybe fate had simply rolled its dice poorly when assigning him his lot in life. All he knew was that every day he woke up alive was another small victory against the odds stacked against him. The battlefield was chaos incarnate, blinding flashes of energy weapons illuminating the night sky, deafening explosions shaking the earth beneath his boots, and the acrid stench of burnt metal and flesh filling the air. It was hell, plain and simple. But Corbin had learned to survive. He moved with practiced caution, ducking behind cover whenever possible, trusting no one, not even his own comrades. In this kind of war, trust was a luxury you couldn't afford. You followed orders because disobeying meant death, but loyalty? That was something else entirely. Loyalty got people killed faster than anything else. So Corbin kept his head down, did what he was told, and tried not to think about why he was fighting or what the point of it all was. On this particular mission, however, things went awry almost immediately. His squad had been sent deep into enemy territory to sabotage a key communications relay, a routine operation, or so command claimed. But nothing about this war was ever routine. As soon as they breached the perimeter, alarms blared, and the Valith descended upon them like a swarm of locusts. Bright beams of light cut through the darkness, searing through armor and flesh alike. Corbin found himself separated from the rest of his team after an explosion knocked him off his feet, leaving him disoriented and alone amidst the chaos. He stumbled forward blindly, his ears ringing and his vision blurred. The forest around him seemed alive with movement, shadows darting between trees and glowing eyes watching from the underbrush. Every step felt heavier than the last, each breath more labored. And then, just as he thought he might collapse altogether, he saw it, a faint glimmer of light emanating from a clearing ahead. Against all logic, he staggered toward it, driven by some primal instinct to seek safety, or perhaps surrender. What he found there defied explanation. Standing, or rather hovering, at the center of the clearing was a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Its body shimmered with iridescent hues, shifting colors like sunlight dancing across water. Delicate appendages extended outward from its torso, resembling insectal wings made of translucent crystal. Its face, if one could call it that, was smooth and featureless save for two large, luminous orbs where eyes should have been. It radiated an aura of serenity that clashed violently with the carnage surrounding them. For a moment, neither moved. Corbin's weapon hung limply at his side, forgotten in his shock. The being tilted its head slightly, studying him with those unblinking orbs. Then, without warning, it raised one of its crystalline limbs and gestured toward him. A soft hum filled the air, resonating deep within his chest. Before he could react, tendrils of golden light snaked out from the being's form, wrapping around him like ethereal vines. They didn't hurt, they barely registered as physical sensations at all, but they held him firmly in place, immobilizing him completely. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the being vanished. Corbin collapsed to the ground, gasping for air as though he'd been submerged underwater. Around him, the sounds of battle faded into silence, replaced by an eerie stillness. He lay there for what felt like hours, staring up at the alien sky and wondering if he'd imagined the whole thing. When the soldiers finally arrived, dragging him back to their base camp, Corbin couldn't bring himself to speak. They asked questions, prodded him for details, but he remained silent. How could he explain what he'd seen? What he'd felt? Even now, days later, the memory felt dreamlike, unreal. But one thing lingered in his mind, refusing to fade. The image of those glowing orbs, watching him with an intelligence far greater than anything he'd encountered before. Weeks passed in a haze of confusion and paranoia. Corbin returned to duty, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Every patrol, every firefight felt hollow, devoid of purpose. The other soldiers noticed. He could see it in their sidelong glances, hear it in their muttered comments, but no one confronted him directly. War bred mistrust, and anyone who acted strangely was best left alone. Then came the summons. It arrived in the dead of night, delivered by a high-ranking officer whose presence alone demanded obedience. Corbin was ordered to report to the command tent immediately, no questions asked. His stomach churned as he approached, half expecting to be court-martialed for some unknown transgression. Instead, he was ushered inside to find a group of officers gathered around a holographic display showing intricate schematics of a sprawling alien structure. "This is your fault," one of them growled, pointing an accusatory finger at him. "You led us straight to her." The word echoed in Corbin's mind, though he couldn't comprehend its significance. Before he could respond, another officer stepped forward, his tone calmer but no less severe. "We intercepted transmissions indicating that the individual you encountered, the one responsible for disabling our entire battalion, is none other than Princess Lysandra of the Valeth royal family." Corbin blinked, struggling to process the revelation. The ethereal being from the forest. A princess? It sounded absurd, impossible. Yet the look on the officers' faces told him they were deadly serious. "She has requested your presence," the second officer continued. "Specifically you. Refusal is not an option." Before Corbin could protest, or even fully grasp what was happening, he was loaded onto a transport vessel alongside a contingent of heavily armed guards. The journey was long and tense, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him like a physical force. When they finally landed, he was escorted into a vast chamber adorned with intricate carvings and glowing runes that pulsed softly with inner light. At its center sat the being he'd encountered weeks earlier, her form now draped in flowing garments that shimmered like liquid starlight. She regarded him silently, her luminous orbs fixed on his face. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, to his astonishment, she addressed him, not in words, but directly in his mind, her voice melodic yet tinged with sorrow. "You have broken sacred laws," she said. "Your intrusion into my domain violated ancient protocols designed to preserve balance. Yet I sense no malice in you, only ignorance." Corbin opened his mouth to reply, but no sound came out. She raised a delicate limb, and suddenly he understood. She hadn't merely captured him during their first encounter, she'd marked him somehow, binding him to her will. Panic surged through him, but before he could act, she continued. "Among my people, such violations carry consequences. You are now bound to me, to serve, to protect, to honor." Her tone softened, though her gaze remained unwavering. "Do you accept?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications he couldn't begin to fathom. Acceptance meant surrendering his autonomy, becoming a pawn in a game he didn't understand. But refusal, he doubted he'd survive long enough to regret it. He began haltingly, his voice trembling. "I don't know what you want from me." A flicker of amusement crossed her otherwise serene expression. "You will learn." With that, the guards ushered him away, leaving him to ponder the enormity of what had just transpired. Whatever bond she'd forged between them, it was undeniable and irreversible. In the weeks that followed, Corbin found himself thrust into a world utterly foreign to him. The Valeth Palace was a labyrinthine expanse of gleaming spires and cascading waterfalls, its architecture blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Everywhere he turned, he encountered beings whose forms ranged from humanoid to utterly alien, their movements fluid and graceful. Despite their diversity, they shared an unspoken reverence for Lysandra, bowing low whenever she passed. His role, however, remained undefined. Though technically designated as her personal attendant, a glorified guard, according to the whispers among the staff, he spent most of his time wandering aimlessly, observing the rituals and customs of the Valeth. Meals were communal affairs, served in grand halls where conversations flowed telepathically rather than verbally. Ceremonies honoring ancestors and celestial bodies occurred daily, their meanings lost on Corbin but imbued with palpable reverence. And always, there was Lysandra, presiding over these events with quiet dignity. Yet beneath her poise lay a fragility that became increasingly apparent the longer he stayed. On the surface, she appeared regal and composed, commanding respect with little effort. But closer observation revealed subtle signs of struggle. The way she leaned slightly on her crystalline throne, the faint tremor in her limbs when rising to address her subjects, the moments when her ethereal glow dimmed ever so slightly. It was clear she suffered from some affliction, though whether physical, mental, or spiritual, Corbin couldn't say. One evening, while escorting her to a private garden reserved for meditation, he dared to broach the subject. "My lady," he ventured hesitantly, "forgive me, but are you well?" Lysandra paused mid-step, turning her luminous orbs toward him. For a moment, she seemed taken aback, as though unaccustomed to such direct inquiry. Then, with a sigh that carried centuries of weariness, she motioned for him to follow her to a secluded bench overlooking a tranquil pond. "I am what my people call tethered," she explained, her mental voice tinged with melancholy. "Long ago, I sustained injuries that severed my connection to the source, a divine energy that sustains our kind. Without it, I am incomplete, fragile." Corbin listened intently, his brow furrowed in concern. "Is there nothing that can be done?" Her response was slow, measured. "There are ways, yes. Rituals, sacrifices. But none come without cost. My condition is a burden I must bear, for my people, for peace." The admission struck him deeply. Here was a ruler willing to endure unimaginable hardship for the sake of her kingdom, yet unable to fully partake in its splendor. Compassion stirred within him, mingling with guilt for his initial disdain. He realized then that his perception of her, and by extension her people, had been shaped by fear and misunderstanding. Slowly, inexorably, his perspective began to shift. As days turned into months, Corbin grew accustomed to the rhythms of life within the Valeth Palace. Yet beneath the veneer of routine lay a growing tension, one rooted in the stark cultural divide between him and his captors-turned-keepers. The Valeth operated on principles entirely alien to human sensibilities, their society governed by intricate codes of conduct and metaphysical beliefs that bordered on the mystical. To them, existence itself was a delicate balance maintained through harmony with the source, a concept Corbin struggled to comprehend, let alone embrace. His ignorance often placed him at odds with those around him. During formal gatherings, he would inadvertently offend dignitaries by failing to adhere to ceremonial protocols. Simple gestures like bowing too shallowly or speaking out of turn were perceived as grave insults, earning him wary glances and whispered critiques. Even mundane tasks, such as serving meals or arranging flowers, carried symbolic weight that eluded him entirely. Each misstep chipped away at his confidence, reinforcing his status as an outsider. Lysandra bore witness to these struggles with a mixture of patience and frustration. While she understood the limitations imposed by his humanity, her position demanded adherence to tradition, even from him. There were moments when her disappointment manifested subtly, a flicker of sadness crossing her luminous features as she corrected yet another blunder. Other times, her exasperation boiled over, leading to terse exchanges conducted via thought rather than speech. "You must try harder," she scolded after he accidentally disrupted a sacred rite by stepping into a forbidden zone. "These customs are not arbitrary. They hold meaning. To disregard them is to disrespect everything we stand for." "I'm trying," Corbin shot back, his voice raw with emotion. "But how can I possibly understand what I'm supposed to do when no one explains it to me?" Her expression softened, though her resolve remained firm. "Ignorance does not absolve responsibility. If you wish to fulfill your role, you must learn." Their clashes were frequent but never malicious. Beneath the surface lay mutual respect tempered by necessity. For all her frustrations, Lysandra recognized Corbin's sincerity and genuine desire to adapt. Likewise, despite his resentment toward the rigid rules governing his new life, Corbin couldn't deny the depth of care Lysandra extended toward him. She ensured he received proper nourishment, provided guidance when needed, and shielded him from the harshest judgments of her courtiers. This dynamic created a paradoxical bond between them, one fraught with contradictions yet undeniably strong. Over time, Corbin began to view Lysandra not merely as a ruler or captor but as someone burdened by expectations far beyond her control. Her vulnerability, hidden beneath layers of decorum, tugged at his empathy, fostering a protective instinct he hadn't anticipated. Similarly, Lysandra found herself drawn to his resilience, his willingness to persevere despite overwhelming odds. In him, she glimpsed echoes of her own determination to endure. Their relationship evolved into something neither could have predicted, a fragile alliance built on shared adversity. Conversations grew longer, delving into topics ranging from philosophy to personal histories. Corbin recounted tales of Earth, painting vivid pictures of landscapes and cultures vastly different from those of the Vailith. In return, Lysandra shared insights into her people's history, weaving narratives of triumphs and tragedies that spanned millennia. Through these exchanges, barriers began to dissolve, replaced by tentative understanding. Yet even as their connection deepened, the specter of conflict loomed large. News from the warfront trickled in sporadically, each report underscoring the widening rift between humanity and the Vailith. Rumors circulated of escalating hostilities, of factions within both societies advocating for total annihilation. Corbin felt the weight of these developments keenly, torn between loyalty to his species and the bonds he'd forged in captivity. One fateful evening, as they strolled through the palace gardens bathed in twilight hues, Lysandra halted abruptly, her luminous orbs clouded with unease. "They are coming," she murmured, her mental voice tinged with dread. "Your people. They seek retribution." Corbin's heart sank. What will happen? She turned to face him, her countenance solemn. War changes nothing. Only unity can heal the wounds inflicted by hatred. But achieving such unity requires sacrifice, greater than either of us may be prepared to give. The gravity of her words settled over him like a shroud. For the first time, he realized the true stakes of their intertwined destinies. Whatever choices lay ahead, they would demand more than mere compromise. They would require courage, conviction, and perhaps the ultimate price. In the days following Lysandra's ominous declaration, an unsettling calm blanketed the palace. Servants moved with hushed urgency, their usual grace replaced by hurried steps and furtive glances. Courtiers convened in secretive clusters, their telepathic exchanges muted and tense. Even the vibrant flora adorning the garden seemed subdued, their colors dulled as if mirroring the collective anxiety permeating the air. Corbin sensed the storm brewing on the horizon, its inevitability pressing down on him like a suffocating weight. Despite the mounting pressure, Corbin and Lysandra continued their nightly walks, clinging to these fleeting moments of normalcy. One evening, as they traversed a secluded grove illuminated by bioluminescent blossoms, Lysandra stopped abruptly, her luminous orbs fixed on a distant spire. "The council convenes tonight," she said, her mental voice carrying an undertone of resignation. "They will decide our course of action." Corbin swallowed hard, dread coiling in his gut. What options are there? Few. She sighed, her crystalline form shimmering faintly. Some advocate for retaliation, believing strength alone can deter further aggression. Others propose negotiation, though trust between our peoples is fragile at best. "And you?" he asked softly. Her gaze shifted to him, filled with a complexity of emotions he struggled to decipher. "I believe in reconciliation. But such ideals are often drowned out by cries for vengeance. My influence, while significant, is not absolute." The admission hung heavy between them, underscoring the precariousness of her position. Corbin reached out instinctively, his hand hovering inches from her radiant form before withdrawing awkwardly. "If there's anything I can do." Her expression softened, a flicker of gratitude passing through her orbs. "Your presence here is already a testament to possibility. Perhaps that alone holds more power than we realize." As dawn broke the next morning, the palace buzzed with activity. Couriers darted between chambers, delivering messages sealed with intricate sigils. Guards stationed themselves along corridors, their crystalline armor gleaming ominously. Corbin wandered aimlessly, feeling like a ghost haunting a world teetering on the brink of collapse. Eventually, he found himself outside the grand hall where the council convened, its towering doors carved with scenes depicting epochs of Vailith history. He pressed his ear against the cool metal, straining to catch fragments of the debate within. Voices rose and fell in rhythmic cadence, arguments punctuated by bursts of telepathic energy that reverberated through the walls. Occasionally, Lysandra's voice pierced the cacophony, steady and measured, advocating for restraint. Yet hers was but one among many, each vying for dominance in a chorus of discordant perspectives. Hours passed before the doors finally creaked open, releasing a stream of delegates whose expressions ranged from grim determination to outright despair. Corbin scanned their faces anxiously until he spotted Lysandra emerging last, her posture weary yet resolute. She beckoned him silently, leading him to a secluded balcony overlooking the sprawling cityscape below. "The decision has been made," she announced without preamble. "We extend an olive branch, a delegation to negotiate terms of ceasefire. However—" Her voice faltered, hesitation clouding her orbs. "Such gestures require guarantees. Hostages, if you will." Corbin stiffened, dread pooling in his stomach. "Who? You?" The word landed like a hammer blow, stealing the breath from his lungs. "Your presence ensures compliance from your people. Should negotiations fail—" She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. Anger surged within him, hot and irrational. "So I'm to be sacrificed? Used as leverage?" "No." Lysandra's form flared brightly, her distress manifesting physically. "It is not punishment, Corbin. It is protection, for both our peoples. If you accompany the delegation, demonstrate goodwill, perhaps we can forge a path toward peace." He stared at her, conflicting emotions warring within him. Betrayal clawed at his throat, yet beneath it lay a kernel of understanding. This was her world, her responsibility. Could he truly fault her for prioritizing the survival of her kind? "What happens if I refuse?" he asked quietly. Her luminescence dimmed, sorrow etched into every facet of her being. "Then war becomes inevitable. And countless lives, on both sides, will be lost." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant hum of the city awakening below. Corbin closed his eyes, grappling with the enormity of the choice before him. Sacrifice was a concept he'd always associated with heroism, valor displayed on battlefields drenched in glory. This was different, quieter, more intimate. A sacrifice born not of bravery but of love, however unconventional it might seem. "I'll go," he said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "But not because I'm ordered to. Because I choose to." Relief washed over Lysandra's form, her orbs brightening momentarily. "Thank you," she whispered, the words carrying a weight far beyond gratitude. "Know that whatever comes, you carry my hope with you." Days blurred into preparation as the delegation assembled, each member selected for their diplomatic prowess and symbolic significance. Corbin observed from the sidelines, acutely aware of the scrutiny directed his way. Some viewed him with suspicion, others with pity, but none approached him directly. Isolation wrapped around him like a cloak, sharpening his resolve. Finally, the eve of departure arrived. As Corbin stood on the threshold of the palace gates, clad in attire blending human practicality with Veilith elegance, Lysandra approached him. Her crystalline frame trembled slightly, betraying the strain she endured. Reaching out, she placed a delicate limb on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. "Remember," she said, her mental voice tender yet firm, "you represent not just yourself, but the potential for unity. Carry that truth with you, always." Nodding mutely, Corbin stepped forward, joining the procession embarking on a journey fraught with uncertainty. Behind him, Lysandra watched until his figure vanished into the horizon, her luminous orbs reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions: hope, fear, and above all, love. The journey to the designated negotiation site unfolded like a surreal dreamscape, each step taking Corbin further from familiarity and deeper into uncharted territory. The delegation traveled aboard a sleek vessel that defied conventional physics, its interior adorned with luminescent panels casting shifting patterns reminiscent of starlight. Human technology paled in comparison, a fact that gnawed at Corbin's pride but also underscored the magnitude of what was at stake. Seated among the Veilith envoys, he felt conspicuous, an anomaly amidst beings whose very essence seemed woven from cosmic threads. Their conversations flowed seamlessly through telepathic channels, leaving him isolated in a sea of silent dialogue. Upon arrival, the contrast between the Veilith craft and the human encampment was stark. Where the former exuded elegance and precision, the latter bristled with makeshift fortifications and utilitarian structures. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their weapons trained on the approaching vessel with palpable tension. As the delegation disembarked, Corbin caught sight of Colonel Hargrove, a grizzled veteran whose steely gaze locked onto him instantly. Recognition flickered across the colonel's face, swiftly replaced by thinly veiled contempt. "You've got some nerve showing your face here, soldier," Hargrove barked, striding forward with deliberate menace. "Traitorous scum, fraternizing with the enemy." Corbin straightened, meeting the accusation head-on. "I'm here to prevent more bloodshed, sir. Nothing else matters." Hargrove sneered, raising a hand to signal his men to lower their weapons reluctantly. "We'll see about that. Follow me." The human delegation awaited inside a reinforced bunker, its walls lined with tactical maps and communication arrays buzzing incessantly. Representatives from various factions sat around a circular table, their expressions ranging from skeptical to outright hostile. Corbin noted familiar faces: diplomats, scientists, military strategists, all united by a shared goal yet divided by differing ideologies. As he took his seat beside the Velith envoys, he felt the weight of scrutiny intensify, every eye boring into him with varying degrees of suspicion. Negotiations commenced with formal introductions, each side presenting credentials steeped in ceremony and symbolism. When it came time for Corbin to speak, he rose slowly, acutely aware of the spotlight trained on him. "I stand before you today not as a representative of any single faction," he began, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins, "but as proof that understanding can transcend differences. My presence here is a testament to the possibility of coexistence." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, skepticism evident in the furrowed brows and crossed arms. A human diplomat interjected sharply, "Coexistence? After everything they've done? You expect us to forget the atrocities committed against our kind?" Corbin met the challenge head-on. "I don't ask you to forget. I ask you to consider whether perpetuating this cycle benefits anyone. We're stronger together than apart. Isn't that worth exploring?" The room erupted into heated debate, voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of argument and counter-argument. Amidst the tumult, Lysandra's voice echoed faintly in his mind, grounding him. "Stay focused," she urged silently. "Believe in the message you carry." Hours stretched into days as discussions oscillated between progress and deadlock. Proposals were drafted, scrutinized, and revised endlessly. Trust proved elusive, each concession met with demands for further guarantees. Yet amidst the turbulence, glimmers of hope emerged. Shared concerns over resource scarcity, mutual interests in technological advancement, and underlying desires for lasting peace. These commonalities, though fragile, formed the foundation upon which tentative agreements began to take shape. Throughout the proceedings, Corbin navigated a precarious tightrope, balancing advocacy for both sides while resisting the pull of bias. Allies emerged unexpectedly, a young scientist fascinated by Velith innovations, a seasoned general weary of endless conflict, and adversaries revealed themselves equally unpredictably. Each interaction tested his resolve, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about loyalty, identity, and the nature of sacrifice. One evening, as tensions reached a boiling point, Corbin found himself cornered by a group of human soldiers outside the bunker. Their hostility crackled in the air, palpable and volatile. "You think wearing their clothes makes you one of them?" one spat venomously. "You're still human, same as us. Don't forget that." Corbin squared his shoulders, refusing to back down. Being human doesn't mean blind allegiance to destruction. It means choosing a better path, even when it's hard. The confrontation escalated, fists clenched and tempers flaring, until a commanding voice cut through the fray. "Stand down," Colonel Hargrove bellowed, stepping between them. His glare swept over the soldiers before settling on Corbin. "Whatever your reasons, boy, remember this: actions speak louder than words. Prove yourself worthy of trust, or prepare for the consequences." As the soldiers dispersed reluctantly, Corbin exhaled shakily, the encounter leaving him shaken yet resolute. Trust was a currency earned through deeds, not declarations. And proving himself worthy required more than eloquent speeches or noble intentions. It demanded tangible results. Returning to the negotiation chamber, Corbin resumed his role with renewed determination. Each proposal, each compromise, became a brick laid in the foundation of a future neither side could yet envision. Progress remained painstakingly slow, setbacks frequent and discouraging, but the seeds of change had been planted. Whether they would bloom into lasting peace remained uncertain, but the possibility alone fueled his perseverance. Through it all, Lysendra's presence lingered in his thoughts, a beacon guiding him through the labyrinth of diplomacy. Her faith in him bolstered his own wavering confidence, reminding him why he'd chosen this path. Together, though separated by distance, they forged ahead, driven by a shared vision of unity born from sacrifice. The final session of negotiations loomed large, its outcome poised to determine the fate of two species teetering on the precipice of either harmony or annihilation. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation, every participant acutely aware of the stakes. Papers shuffled, holographic displays flickered, and voices murmured in hushed tones, each sound amplifying the tension gripping the room. Corbin sat at the center of the chaos, his hands clasped tightly together, knuckles white with suppressed anxiety. Beside him, the Valeth envoys radiated a collective calm, their luminous forms pulsating gently, as if drawing strength from some unseen source. Across the table, the human representatives mirrored his unease, their faces etched with lines of exhaustion and doubt. Among them, Colonel Hargrove leaned forward, his weathered features set in a mask of grim resolve. "Let's cut to the chase," he growled, addressing the lead Valeth negotiator. "What assurances do we have that this ceasefire won't crumble the moment we lower our guard?" The envoy inclined her crystalline head, responding not with words but with a cascade of images projected directly into everyone's minds. Scenes of devastated landscapes, both human and Valeth, flashed before them, cities reduced to rubble, ecosystems ravaged by warfare. The message was clear: neither side could afford further destruction. Yet skepticism lingered, festering like an open wound. Corbin cleared his throat, drawing attention to himself. "Assurances aren't enough," he stated firmly. "We need actions. Concrete steps toward rebuilding trust." He glanced at the Valeth, then back at the humans. Both sides must commit to transparency, open borders, shared resources, joint research initiatives. Anything less risks repeating past mistakes. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly, tentative yet promising. Encouraged, Corbin pressed on. "And there's something else. Something personal." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "During my time among the Valeth, I've come to understand their culture, their values. They aren't monsters bent on conquest. They're survivors, just like us. If we can see beyond our differences, we might find common ground worth fighting for." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Slowly, nods of acknowledgement spread throughout the room, bridging divides previously thought insurmountable. Hope, fragile and flickering, began to take root. But as the discussion progressed, cracks began to form. Disagreements over territorial boundaries erupted into heated arguments, old grievances resurfacing with startling ferocity. Accusations flew, tempers flared, and the fragile consensus threatened to unravel. Corbin watched helplessly as the momentum stalled, despair creeping in like shadows lengthening at dusk. It was then that Lysendra's voice echoed in his mind once more, urgent and compelling. "Corbin, you must act. Now." Summoning every ounce of courage, he rose to his feet, silencing the room with a single gesture. "Enough!" he shouted, his voice resonating with authority he didn't know he possessed. "This isn't about borders or resources. It's about survival. About ensuring that future generations inherit a world worth living in. Are we really going to let pride and fear dictate our destiny?" Silence enveloped the chamber, broken only by the faint hum of machinery. Then, unexpectedly, a young human scientist stood up, her expression earnest. "He's right. We can't keep doing this to ourselves. To each other." Others followed suit, voicing support for compromise, for collaboration. Yet amidst the burgeoning optimism, a shadow fell across the proceedings. An aide rushed in, whispering urgently into Colonel Hargrove's ear. The colonel's face darkened, his jaw tightening as he processed the information. Rising abruptly, he addressed the assembly. "We've received intel suggesting rogue elements within the Valeth ranks plan to sabotage these talks. Sabotage peace itself." Panic rippled through the room, distrust reigniting like embers fanned by wind. Corbin's heart sank, the fragile trust painstakingly built over weeks threatening to shatter irreparably. "That's impossible," he protested, searching the Valeth envoys' faces for confirmation. But their expressions remained impassive, unreadable. Hargrove slammed his fist on the table, his voice thunderous. Impossible or not, we can't ignore this threat. Unless someone provides concrete evidence disproving these claims, I say we abandon negotiations altogether. Corbin felt the weight of failure crushing him, the culmination of his efforts slipping through his fingers. Desperation clawed at his throat as he turned to the Valeth lead negotiator. "Please," he implored silently, projecting his plea telepathically. "Say something. Anything." The envoy hesitated, her luminescent form dimming slightly. Then, with deliberate slowness, she extended a crystalline limb, placing it atop the table. A hologram materialized above it, displaying real-time surveillance footage of Valeth operatives intercepting and neutralizing the alleged saboteurs. Gasps of astonishment rippled through the room as the truth unfolded before their eyes. "We anticipated treachery," the envoy explained calmly. "Preemptive measures were taken to ensure the integrity of these negotiations. Our commitment to peace remains unwavering." Relief washed over Corbin, relief tempered by lingering apprehension. The immediate crisis had been averted, but the road ahead remained fraught with challenges. As the session adjourned temporarily, allowing both sides to regroup and reassess, Corbin retreated to a quiet corner, his mind racing with possibilities and uncertainties. Lysandra's voice returned, softer now, infused with warmth. "You've done well, Corbin. Better than anyone could have hoped. But remember, the hardest battles lie ahead." He nodded silently, gazing out at the horizon where twin suns dipped below the skyline, casting elongated shadows across the barren terrain. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new tests of resolve. But for now, amidst the ruins of conflict and the promise of renewal, he allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Whatever the future held, he faced it not alone, but buoyed by the knowledge that bridges, once built, could withstand even the fiercest storms.